This story took place in the early 90s, specifically in 1992, and the author of the story was 6 years old at the time. He lived in a normal family and had a twin brother, and they lived a normal life like any two brothers in any family. There are times of serenity and times of bickering, and those times usually ended with some minor injuries such as a scratch or a bruise. But one day, my grandmother came to visit, and from here, everything started to change. My grandmother arrived home and started complaining about the house we were staying in, as she felt that there was something not normal about the house. My grandmother was one of those people who have a high ability to sense what is going on around her that we do not. And she used to tell my father that she heard heavy voices and footsteps in empty rooms. And she also heard. She would even wake up from her sleep when some evil hands would pull her hair and grab her hands or legs when she slept. She would always ask my parents to sell this house, or else the curse would come and continue to follow us. And my father would get annoyed by these words and see that she had grown old and started to go senile. My grandmother decided to leave when she couldn't find anyone to listen to her, and she gathered her clothes and prepared to leave. When she reached the door of the house, she stopped and looked at us and said in a tone full of seriousness and determination, "Take care of yourselves, pray, and be close to God. There is nothing that can protect you now except this." That day, we laughed and laughed at what my grandmother was saying, and for 2 weeks after her departure, we remembered what my grandmother had said. So we laughed at the demons she told us about, and stayed up late and exhausted them so that they might appear to us. We remembered my grandmother's words that the devil could be represented by the neighbor's cat, so we beat it, and how much we enjoyed what we were doing. Life went on normally until about 2 months passed, and that's when we started having nightmares and disturbing dreams, sporadically but frequently. And the nightmares were very frightening, and my brother and I were dreaming the same nightmares in great detail. At about 11 o'clock one night, my brother and I were in our room, and it was dark, and by the light of the flashlight I was reading at my desk and my brother was asleep. And after about an hour, I turned off the flashlight and went to sleep. And after some time, I woke up and found my brother moving from his bed to sleep next to me. And he was shaking badly, and I started hearing the sound of the floor as if he was screaming, and I started to reassure my brother. I asked him what happened, and he came closer to me and whispered in a frightened voice. I dreamed that there were evil dwarfs who were trying to kidnap me by digging tunnels under the house. How scary their shapes and smiles were. I returned, smiling at him, trying to reassure him, but I was terrified because I had seen the same nightmare before. We heard my father's voice coming out of his room and walked until he reached the door of our room and stopped. I felt safe and comfortable, so we took our heads out from under the blanket waiting for my father to enter, but we remembered that my father and mother are still at work and no one else is at home. So we were terrified. And here we heard a hoarse voice that could not be a normal human voice coming from the dark corner of the room. Why is he still awake and supposed to be asleep? Suddenly, my brother was pulled from my side, and I saw his body flying out of the room, screaming, and I was so terrified that I buried myself under the blanket and didn't dare to do anything or move. I couldn't tell how much time passed after that, as I remained in my place, paralyzed by the intensity of the horror I was feeling, crying hard and shedding tears, and after a while I was able to gather some of my courage. And I was able to get out of my bed, and my parents arrived, and I heard their voices. But when I stood outside my blanket, I froze as the room changed in size and shrank to half, and everything that belonged to my brother, his bed, his toys, his pictures, his clothes, everything that had to do with my brother disappeared from the room. I ran out of the room, terrified and crying towards my parents, my face filled with tears, my body very cold and shivering as I screamed and told them that I was scared and that my brother had been kidnapped, and how surprised my parents looked as they told me that I had no siblings and that I was an only child since I was young, and my parents became worried about my condition and took me to a psychiatrist. I followed up with the doctor 4 days a week, and this went on for 20 years, and I visited the doctor all this time, until I had to pretend to get better and told them falsely that I was an only child since childhood. But I was still sure that there was a twin brother,